What's up, you beauties? Welcome back to another episode of HW Hockey. We're live on YouTube. I'm Jim Microphone. I'm waiting for Jack to join us in this episode in just a little bit. This is going to be kind of the pre-show here while we wait. If you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the alert so you never miss a show. For all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify so you're first in line when our newest episodes drop. So, yeah, we are waiting for Jack. We have a topic-packed show. I'll get the topics up here for you guys. And there you go. The Flyers snapped their 6-game losing streak last night against Las Vegas. Travis Konechny, 2 goals in the game, both unassisted, by the way, which is interesting. And we're going to ask you guys, was this just a tough stretch in the schedule? Or is the roster showing the flaws that it always kind of had? Are the injuries to blame? Flyers, I don't think they're making a big deal about it, but they lost a few guys in that Anaheim game. Jamie Drysdale, Bobby Brink, Rasmus Ristolainen's been missing for a few games now. Do those make a difference? Now, I don't want to dissect each loss, but I do want to talk about them in some capacity. I also want to discuss trading for a goalie, right? Because I don't think this team's going to roll over. I also don't think Sam Ersson is capable of doing what he did last night for the remainder of the season. Okay? So they're going to have to do something in goal if they're going to reward this roster somehow, because they can't rely on Ersson. I don't think they can count on Dan Vladar to play 50 games. I think that's a mistake if that ends up being the plan. And Alexei Kolosov, who was called up and allowed 3 goals on 3 shots against the New York Rangers on Saturday afternoon. And I thought that was a mistake calling him up. I know the Flyers were in a pinch, so they needed a guy, but I think Kolosov needs to stay in the AHL. I want to talk about that. And then later on in the episode, I want to know, we put out an Elias Pettersson video yesterday. There's rumor that he's on the market now. Vancouver's willing to retain a couple $1 million, or maybe they're not. I don't know. Is this somebody that you guys would want to see in orange and black? Why or why not? Feel free to let me know in the comments. We're probably going solo here till about 9:30. So, it'll be just me and you guys for a little bit here. And then lastly, are you losing faith in the plan here? Are you losing faith in this front office? And what was the start of that for you? Are you losing faith in Danny Briere, who I think's done a pretty solid job? I don't want to say spectacular because we're still missing that 1C. We're still missing that 1D. And frankly, the Flyers don't have a long-term goalie. Now, I know a lot of people like to talk about Zavragan, right? But until I see him, have success in the NHL, it's really hard for me to say, yeah, he's on his way and he's going to step right in and be the number one. Just being honest. So I want to know from you guys, are you losing faith? So let's kind of get started here. We'll open up with, let's get the standings and what's going on in the NHL. What's going on with the Flyers here? Let me get I know you guys don't want to, you guys want to see my mug. There we go. All right. So let's share where the Flyers are currently in the standings after their 6-game losing streak. They did drop a little bit. They were in a playoff spot for the majority of the season until that rough stretch, and they currently sit 3 points out of a playoff spot. Buffalo currently is in the wild card 2 spot with 57 points. The Bruins have won 6 straight. So, it looks like the cream is starting to rise a little bit here in the Eastern Conference. I don't know if anybody really expected the Bruins to do what they're doing on the fly like that. So, where's the scores at for tonight? Because I know Buffalo's playing or played. They're currently winning 3-0 against the Predators, which is good for me because I think I'd bet the Sabres tonight. I bet the Canadians. I bet the Lightning. I bet the Sabres. And I want to say I bet the Oilers. So, of course, New Jersey will probably end up winning that one. But, okay, let's get back to the Flyers here. Really tough stretch in the schedule for them. Let's get that schedule up. January was always going to be tough. To me, they slipped by in December. December wasn't as rough as it could have been, but it also wasn't great. Okay. They had some big wins. A nice 6-3 win over Vancouver, 5-2 win over Vancouver as well. Nice win over Chicago. And, they had a few games where they lost in shootouts. They hung around with the Carolinas, the Golden Knights, lost to the Rangers in a shootout, a game they probably should have won. And they played the Avalanche tough. I know it was a second game of a back-to-back for Colorado, but a 3-2 regulation loss. Now we skip forward to January, and they start out pretty good with a pair of 5-2 wins. And then a game against the Maple Leafs, who that needed to be 2 points. I know Toronto's heating up. The Flyers were winning 1-0 late in that game. Scott Laughton gets on the board with the shorthanded goal, sends the game to overtime. It's chaos, and the Maple Leafs walk out with the 2 points. And then, obviously, the pair of games with the Lightning, where, I think exactly what we were afraid of kind of happened in those 2 games. I know the Flyers were beat up, but the Lightning were red hot. So I know for me, if I took a step back, I'm not going to panic for those 2 games. I'm not going to, it's not going to it didn't derail the way that I thought about the rest of the season after losing those 2 games. And then they have to they go up to Buffalo, who is red hot, So all of this kind of matters, I guess, is what I'm saying. And Buffalo waxes them 5-2. So they ran into, 3 of the hottest teams in the NHL, coming off the emotional high, the Cutter Gauthier game, the Flyers' new Super Bowl. And they win that one 5-2, but they lose a few guys heading into the, some games against tougher teams. Where I felt let down a little bit was the 6-3 loss to the Penguins. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more fight there. I know the goaltending, obviously, once again, not up to par. But also, back-to-back. So were you expecting a win? I wasn't. All of a sudden, they've lost 5 in a row. The New York game. Alexei Kolosov, 3 goals on 3 shots after the Flyers finally score first. So they finally get a 1-goal lead, and they're like, all right, we did it. We're trying to break the trend here. And you give up 3 straight goals on 3 straight shots. Like, what does that do to the morale of a team against a rival at home, where the Rangers fans always kind of come take over now? It's like the complete opposite of the atmosphere of the Cutter Gauthier game in your own arena. So that has to be demoralizing, deflating. And the Rangers were coming into that game the day after they released another one of their stupid letters letting the fans know that they're rebuilding and they're going to be moving guys out, blah, 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 right? So the Rangers came in pissed off, right? And look, it's not to say that the Flyers should have lost 6-3, but it's hard to come back from a goaltending performance like that. And then, just as we all thought, they go out to Vegas and they come away with the 2-1 win. It was, an ugly game to watch. Flyers were trying to give the game away, taking as many penalties as they possibly could. But they pulled out the victory. Travis Konechny, 2 unassisted goals, and it's good enough to win against Vegas. Sam Ersson, hopefully that boosts his confidence a little bit because they need him. If this team's going to be strong and they're going to try to compete for a playoff spot, try to get back into things here, get back into the race, pull themselves back in, they're going to need Sam Ersson to stabilize because he's been terrible. Let's bring up Sam Ersson's numbers real quick here. Because the last we checked, he had like a 850, 860. Sam Ersson, here you go. 860 save percentage for the season is absolutely brutal. And he's still almost as at 500 with a 7-8-4 record. So Ersson's numbers weren't great, 2 years ago when he had an .890 save percentage, but an .890 save percentage would stabilize the backup goalie position right now. And you could see he's progressively gotten worse every season. I've wondered if Ersson's one of those guys where mentally he's not made to be a backup goalie, where he needs to play in, three games a week type thing to keep his focus. And, obviously his best is not great. So he's in a tough spot right now. He's backup goaltender material, but to me, it looks like he can't handle the backup job responsibilities. Does that make sense? So you need to figure out what to do here. And by all accounts, I enjoy listening to Ersson. I think he's a good guy, good head on his shoulders. His teammates like him. But at the end of the day, you need skill. You need to come through, sometimes single-handedly loses the Flyers games, unfortunately, but I guess we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here with the goalies, but Ersson's got to figure it out, I think, if the Flyers are going to do anything this year. So, okay, let's move on to one of our next topics here, guys, now that we kind of went through that. So I guess what I was trying to say there was each game was different. I know they went 0-4 last week. They're 3-5-1 in January. But they ran into some pretty tough teams that were, coming through like gangbusters there in the Lightning, the Sabres. The Pittsburgh games are not even fun anymore. And if you bet on Sidney Crosby to score, you probably made some money that night. I think it was and ESPN didn't even mention it. I think it was for a 650th NHL goal. That was a lock. He was always going to score 650 against the Flyers on ESPN, right? So, yeah. I look, the only truly painfully bad loss to me, and maybe I'm delusional, of those 5 straight regulation losses was the New York Ranger game. And if Kolosov doesn't allow 3 goals on 3 shots, who knows what that game looks like? But the other 4, it's going to sound like excuses, but I could give them a pass for those games. Beat up a little bit. And like I said, some of the hottest teams in the league there in Tampa, Buffalo, and then you get Pittsburgh, second night of the back-to-back, while you're missing some guys. Vladar's still out. So you have to work with Ersson or Kolosov. So, look, if you still want this team to make the playoffs, I don't think those games are the games that you should use to say we can't do it this year. Does that make sense? I think those are games that hopefully the team can say, let's throw away all 5 of these and let's move forward to Vegas, to Utah, to Colorado. Let's get through this road stretch here, this 3-game Western trip, and come home and try to take care of business against the upstart New York Islanders, who don't look like they're going anywhere anytime soon. And Columbus, another hot team. Whereas if you guys saw that interview with, I believe it was Elvis Merzlikins after one of their games, I think it was Jody Shelley that asked him, what's different with the Blue Jackets? Why are they winning games now? And he replied, just the coach. They have a new coach. I can't recall who their new coach is, but I think Dean Evason was the old coach, and he's gone, and they've ripped off a few wins. So Columbus is going to come in hot. Or we're going to head out to Columbus. They're going to be hot the first night of a back-to-back. I mentioned the Bruins won 6 straight. So it doesn't really get easier for the Flyers next week either to finish out January. I'm already looking forward to July, free agency. And then, after they finish out January, they have 2 games before the Olympic break. So they have 2 weeks to figure things out, pretty much. All right, so I'm reading a few comments before I skip on to the next topic here. Sam Fortunato. Sam, thanks for always keeping me steady here. You are being delusional, Sam says. It's about how they lost. They got pounded. But let me ask you this. Does the fact that they were missing Bobby Brink, who's sort of one of the straws that stirs that third line drink, does the fact that they were missing Bobby Brink, Rasmus Ristolainen, and Jamie Drysdale for a few of those games matter at all to you? Add in the fact that Dan Vladar was hurt. And I said it last show. If Vladar goes down, the Flyers season goes down. Straight down. Like, no hope. And proving to be true, no? So if they get Vladar back and they can get some semblance of a capable backup goalie, why can't they rip off a few wins? You know, why couldn't they take some of these games to overtime, or at least get the loser point, whatever it is? So we have Mr. Twitzer checking in. They didn't play well, but they also couldn't get a single save on 3 shots. Hard to win like that. Exactly. And look, I'm not saying that they played well in front of these guys, because the defense was a little sus, especially against New York, in my opinion. But come on. 3 goals on 3 shots, right? So it's easy to lose faith when you lose 5 straight. And it hasn't, Flyers haven't exactly been blowing the doors off anybody this year, right? But 5 straight is a little demoralizing. So, yeah, we'll see. A win versus Vegas. I didn't think anybody had them taking 2 points in regulation against Vegas. We'll see what they do against Utah. If they rip off a win against Utah, all of a sudden that's 2 in a row heading into Colorado, which, you know, you expect them to lose there. So four out of a possible 6 points on the Western Conference, road trip. It's not bad. All right, so let's move on here a little bit, and this is where I want to talk about goalies a little bit for you guys. So Dan Vladar was signed in the offseason to complement Sam Ersson, right? And right out of the gates, Dan Vladar kind of took that job from Ers, which was good to see. Vladar looked pretty good, deserved the starts, and what have you. My worry was Vladar's played max 30 games in a season. Has never played more than 30 games in a season, right? And I said last week, it kind of feels like the Michael Neuwirth, Brian Elliott combination. And not that either of Vladar or Elliott or Vladar and Ersson are injury prone, but injuries could happen, especially if a guy's not used to playing the way that Vladar's been playing. He's been the backup guy throughout his career, the guy to come in and play 20 to 30 games. And that's what his body's used to doing. He's already played 30 games and we're in January. Season's 4 months old, halfway done. He's going to start breaking down. It just happens. That's the way it's going to go. So if you're Briere, even before this point, like Ersson hasn't been good all year, you need to be on the phone. We need a guy. I know Kolosov's playing well in the AHL, but I think I said last week or multiple times, this season, I would leave Kolosov in the AHL. Why? Because he's playing well. And let's bring up his stats here real quick. Alexei Kolosov this season with the Phantoms. He was AHL Player of the Week a couple weeks ago. For the season, he has a .908 save percentage in Lehigh with a 2.54 goals against average. Now, the Phantoms have been playing not as great as they started the year, and I attribute that to some of guys like Carl Grunstrom, Denver Barkey being called up to the Flyers, things like that. Alex Bumps missed some games. So the Phantoms have kind of balanced out a little bit there. But my worry with Kolosov was now all of a sudden you're bouncing him back and forth again. And if he gets rocked in a game, what's that going to do to his confidence? And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened against New York. 3 goals on 3 shots. And I guess, how can you put him back in the game? I think Vladar is going to be back by the time the Flyers have, by the time they play the Blue Jackets and the Bruins back to back. So they may not have to start Kolosov. Like, who are you going to play him against? Are you going to toss him in against Colorado? Like, how can you be okay starting him? And from the team perspective, and then from his own perspective, like, would his confidence not be shot? Like, okay, I can play in the AHL, but when I get to the NHL, it's the same old song and dance. An 884 save percentage. I'm sorry, an 867 save percentage in 17 games with the Flyers last year. 830 so far in 4 games this year. I'm worried. Like the alarms are kind of going off for me on Kolosov a little bit here. So I didn't want to call him up. For me, it was always, let's go find a cheap option. And I know that's a lot easier to say. Put out a video about the Buffalo Sabres last week. Look, they're not going to touch Luukkonen. That's Buffalo's guy. And he's expensive. So even if they wanted him, I would say let's not go for Luukkonen. Let's go for the cheaper Band-Aid type of move. Colton Ellis up there, rookie season. I think he's making the minimum, $775,000 this year. He's playing well in a backup role. I don't think they can send him down. He's kind of on the roster there. Alex Lyons, now back from injury. He's signed for this year and next. And then Devin Levi down in the AHL, who I believe is signed for this year and next, restricted free agent. I would kick the tires around on either Lyon or Colton Ellis. Just somebody that you can get for, hopefully somewhat cheap, which if that's a 3rd or 4th round pick, I don't know. Whatever they cost, that's not obviously a 1st or 2nd round pick. But the guys have played well enough in front of these guys where they deserve a chance to win. And Ersson doesn't really give you that. Last night was kind of an anomaly. Ersson on most nights doesn't give you a chance to win with an 860 save percentage. And Alexei Kolosov, I wouldn't call him up again the rest of the season. You can't rely on that. You can't depend on that. So I would go the route of looking for a goalie. And when Vladar gets back, it doesn't mean, okay, the savior's back. In my mind, it's, when's he going to go down next? And that's how, if the Flyers are still going to make a push to get back into these things here, if they make a move for a goalie, that could show you kind of, what they're hoping happens. If they don't make a move for a goalie, that's the season. So, I mean, what's that say? That says to me, they're okay with sinking to the bottom of the standings looking for a draft pick, which I hope they do at this point. Do I want them to trade for a goalie now? Not really. No, not really. I think I'm more resigned to, let's get a top 10 pick, right? There's some players in this draft. I think there's more. I haven't looked really at this draft, but I think there's more wings, which is fine because you can move these picks now. It's like you don't have to draft with the pick that you end up having in this draft. You can move it, right? Much like we saw Minnesota do. And this is what the Flyers should be doing. Just draft the best available player. Even if he's a wing, it doesn't mean that he needs to play on your roster. When a guy like Quinn Hughes, or maybe a guy like we're going to talk about later, Elias Pettersson, becomes available, you can use these assets. You don't need to hang on to them. You don't need to develop them and hang on. It's impossible. You can't play all your prospects. You're going to have to eventually move some of these guys. So, yeah. All right. So I want to know from you guys, trade for a goalie or kind of ride things out here. And just give me a second, guys. I want to share the stream. But yeah, so would you trade for a goalie, or would you just kind of ride things out with Vladar, Ersson, and Kolosov? I think I need to send Jack the link still too. And I also want to know, do you think the last week and a half, 2 weeks showed how fragile this roster is at this point in time, where, a couple guys go out and, not even like big name guys go out and the Flyers just get obliterated? Does it show the lack of depth, do you think? Is the roster flawed, or do they just run into a bunch of hot teams? Or both? All right, we got the stream share, guys. Now we can get going here. All right. And I also want to talk about Denver Barkey. And I want to talk about the size of a lot of the guys on the Flyers here. Guys are starting to go after Denver Barkey a little bit more. Are you guys seeing this? A little smaller. He's another guy that I would have kept in the AHL. And not that he's going to get bigger or magically grow down there, but Denver Barkey is a guy that I would consider moving in a trade. And I know a lot of people are going to hate that. Barkey, Brink, a lot of these smaller, Andre, who I love. Some of these smaller guys, it might be time to move on while you can. Before, God forbid, one of these guys is out long term. The Flyers need to get bigger, right? And I know, like, it's fun to talk about skill and this and that, but when they go up against some of these bigger teams, we saw it in the Anaheim game. They kind of go after some of the smaller guys. What do you think the playoffs is going to be like? I don't know if a lot of these smaller guys can kind of hang around. Oh, Jack should be home in a few minutes. Let me send the link over to him real quick here. All right. Next up. So Sam, let's get to some comments. Sam asks, why Barkey and not Brink? Either one. Take your pick. If I was able to, I would move both. And Barkey's played well. But you can see, like, when he's on, he's not just a small player. He's really small, like short, and needs to put on at least 30 pounds, man. Like, he's small. Frozato Scotto says, we're going to barely miss the playoffs and have our tradable assets get hurt, but at least we were gritty. Yeah. I could see the losing streak has done a number on you, Frozato, huh? While I'm at, I'll get to this one here. When's the last time we were comfortable in that? Last time we felt good, not even great about goaltending. Look, I wasn't as down on he who should not be named, number 79, as I think most were. And maybe we took him for granted a little bit there. And he was never great, but he had a save percentage over 900, which seems to be pretty tough to do with this Flyers roster for some reason. Carter Hart's career numbers with the Flyers here in 2023-24, 906. Before that, 907. Before that, 905. Tough year. I think the COVID season, 877. And then first 2 years, 917, 914 save percentages. I never thought Carter Hart was the problem. I think the guys in front were a lot of the issue there. But yeah, when's the last time we felt great? When is the last time that we felt good about the guys in goal? Check Monic. I know there's a lot of Steve Mason fans out there, but I gotta be honest. Like I was never one of them. I was excited for when he came over from the Blue Jackets. Well, I don't want to say excited, but it was kind of like, okay, this is a reclamation project kind of guy, because the way his career finished up in Columbus, 894, 899 save percentage before I think he was traded to the Flyers, if I'm not mistaken. And then, you look at his numbers, they were pretty well there. 917, 928, 918, 908 save percentages for the Flyers. So yeah, Steve Mason's pretty good. Maybe I underappreciated, but when I think Steve Mason, I think of the playoffs, that Washington goal. Unfortunately, that was a tough one. It was like his lasting mark. Okay. So Jack's going to be on in a few minutes here. And when he gets on, I want to be talking about Elias Pettersson. And I want to know from you guys, do you want this guy? Because I did a little bit of reading, a little research from what was going on in Vancouver. And obviously, Vancouver guys can know more about that whole situation than I do. But what I found was Tocchet took over up there, and Pettersson had a decent offensive year. I think it was over 100-point season. And then the next year was Tocchet also, another, over point per game season. Let me bring up his numbers here. And then I think everything started kind of going down the tubes last season, when he had 45 points in just 64 games. But before that, point per game, 89 points, 82 games. The year before, 102 points, 80 games. 3 straight 30-goal seasons. So the last year of Tocchet up there was sort of a shell of himself. And from what I found, it seemed to be more of a rift with Pettersson and JT Miller. And JT Miller and Tocchet, while I think on the outside we thought it was them against Pettersson, and Vancouver moved Miller because they were committed to Pettersson longer term. What I read was that Pettersson and that Miller and Tocchet didn't get along. That they were two alpha personalities, both wanted to lead the locker room, which is a little weird to me, because if you're the coach and you have an alpha in the room, you kind of let the alpha do his thing. So there was some weird sort of dynamic there between JT Miller and Rick Tocchet. Ultimately, Miller got shipped out. Pettersson's still up there. This year having a slightly better year numbers-wise in Vancouver, 29 points, 41 games. But some of the quotes from Tocchet up there were, I think, I don't want to say similar to what he's saying about Michkov, but that he wanted more out of Pettersson. I think his practice and his workout regimen wasn't consistent, which sort of showed up in his in games where he was great some nights and then maybe not so great other nights, where Tocchet wanted him to be consistently great. So he had expectations for the player, which I never think is a bad thing. And so where I think Tocchet makes the mistake is he says these things to the media, and media can do whatever they want with this stuff. Here's the thing. And I think maybe a lot of people do this. I'm sure I'm guilty of this sometimes also. Especially from what I've seen from Tocchet so far. I don't think he's very good at explaining himself. He you could see that his brain sort of works faster than his mouth. He cuts himself off a lot of times when he talks. So I have a hard time listening to him. But he'll say something and he's very easy to take out of context. Or, I think as media, fans can think whatever they want. But I think as media, it's important to try to understand where he's coming from when he says these things and not just take what he's saying at face value and go write a story. Does that make sense? And I think Tocchet needs to get better at that. He needs to get better at either how he says things or just stop saying things. Because I don't think he's a great talker. And I think he was doing that with Pettersson up there. And unless I'm wrong, unless somebody can, tell me that there was actual feud between Tocchet and Pettersson that eventually ended up coming out. Because from what I found, I didn't see any like feuding, like bad blood. It was more Tocchet talking about him in the media type stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is, why can't Pettersson come to Philadelphia? Oh, we got Jack over here. Let me bring Jack in, guys. Sorry, Jack. There he is.
You hear me?
Can hear you. Yes, sir.
All right. I can't hear you that well, so give me a sec.
Take your time. All right. Yeah, so we're just talking about Elias Pettersson here, Jack. And while we get you up to speed, let's see some of our comments we have here. Sam Fortunato. Jason makes a good point there, but we still don't have enough high in town. I'm sorry. I must have missed.
Oh, I did read that. He was referring to Vegas.
Martinez, okay.
Doing it without a center. But
yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago with Minnesota. They could be the blueprint.
I would like to see it. That's for sure. I mean, we brought up the Blues. Wouldn't say they didn't have anybody, but hardly a true 1C. I think you make an argument for those teams the other way as well. They did get Eichel, and that is when they were there originally. They did lose to Washington, but it wasn't until they got Eichel that they actually won the cup. And, I like that it's possible. I think anything's possible. It's just the unlikeliness that scares us.
Yeah. Prozato, thanks for hanging out. He's going to listen to the rest tomorrow. Appreciate you. Oh, he wants a 3+ hour show. I don't know if we're going to do all that. Maybe
some kind of trade deadline or
trade deadline.
Free agent frenzy.
Mr. Twitzer, not too big on Elias Pettersson. I think I'd rather try for Robert Thomas as of now.
There's my boy.
And so, yeah, it's interesting. So obviously, when I make these videos, you'll find that I don't really give my opinion during them. They're mostly, just putting out there that, hey, Elias Pettersson's available, and I want to know what you guys think. And obviously, there were a lot of comments on that video, Jack. I'm not sure if you had time to see, but that's what I want. I want discourse between the viewers. I want to get your guys' opinions. And it seemed like the majority didn't really want Pettersson, but there were also a few like, we need a 1C if he's available, and they retain. Let's figure something out. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I did see some comments. It's funny. I sometimes from the people who are just out on it, I see, I can't believe this stuff is posted. It's like, and this is what it comes down to for me. It's like, if you're looking for a 1C, these guys are never available, almost never available. So are you really going to pick and choose? Like what you think? If somebody's available, you have to at least kick the tires. It doesn't mean give up Michkov and Martone for the guy, but you should at least be interested. Now, I obviously lean towards a Robert Thomas deal. I have my reservations about Pettersson. And there was a time, because I had Pettersson in fantasy when he was a nobody, and he turned my team around for a little bit, that I was a huge Pettersson fan. But, I do have my concerns with how well he would fit the structure of our team. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, what are your other options for a number 1C? And I don't have a whole lot. I really don't. I'm pleasantly surprised that Robert Thomas could be available. And I figured Pettersson was coming at some point. I won't lie. I thought I didn't have any proof, but I thought there was some kind of – I don't have any proof that there was a rift between Tocchet and Pettersson. It just felt like he – and I know they traded JT, but it seemed like he more so leaned that way. And maybe that – I don't think I read anything that said that. I think that's just how he plays the game, how he coaches the game, and the way JT plays the game versus vice versa. But then I also heard that he was part of the reason why Pettersson turned into a much better player that got him that contract as well. So who's to say? Sure, he's not my first choice, but what choices do we really have?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to see, because everything that I saw last year was Flyers need Pettersson. If they need to trade for him if he's available. This year, it becomes apparent that he's maybe more available than ever. Vancouver's going through the rebuild, what have you. They're starting to sell off pieces. And it seems like the majority of fans don't want him. And I got to tell you, I'm one of them, Jack. I don't want Pettersson. I think he's not what this roster as constructed, I think, needs. Yeah, they need skill down the middle. But I also think, so Keith Jones said something a while back that they're waiting for the right move. And that's what they should be doing. Now, look, well, Elias Pettersson brings skill to this roster. Maybe he just needs a location change. It seems like things kind of things went toxic up there. And it seemed, in my opinion, to stem from JT Miller and just maybe never left. Maybe the locker room's fractured, whatnot. Quinn Hughes wanted to leave, and that's pretty insane. Maybe he does just need a location change, maybe to get motivated again. And I don't know, maybe there is familiarity there with Tocchet. And maybe I'm completely wrong. But I would like a guy with more, oomph, more skill, size, and I know they're not going to get the perfect guy. If Vancouver could somehow retain $2.5 million on that, I would say, yeah, go for it. Yeah, you're paying your top line center $9 million, a former 100-point scorer. Go for it, But, at the end of the day, I think he's 6'2", 6'3", listed 175.
Yikes.
180. Like, you know what I mean? You could blow on a guy like that and he'll start skating down the ice. So I don't know. It seems like we're kind of getting picky when it's like, hey, this is a former, 100-point guy, almost 40 goal guy available. And you're saying you don't want him, and your 1C is Christian Dvorak. You know what I mean? However, look, this is a rebuild. Maybe it's not a tear it down, tank it up rebuild, but it is a rebuild of an organization, of a roster. And this regime, in my opinion, has earned the right to wait for the right guy. You know what I'm saying?
I'm willing to wait. Not long, but I'm willing to wait. But we should wait because we'd have pulled the trigger on a Zegers trade a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it would have cost us significantly more, where Briere got him for pennies on the dollar. So maybe there's something to that. Or just maybe the right name hasn't appeared yet. But when it does, like I haven't really looked into it too much. I haven't seen much on the Flyers being connected to Robert Thomas. To me, that's like a no-brainer. Like they, at the very least, kicking the tires. And maybe something news popped out that I've missed since he's been basically made available. The Pettersson stuff, I understand. That's a discussion in itself. But right now, we're talking about two different centers that could be available, so I'm going to be a little picky. I really want to know the reasoning as to when this happens, and at least one of these guys is moved, probably Thomas first. I really want to know the reasoning for not being in it. Maybe they are. Maybe Briere works in the shadows, and I got to give him time.
Yeah.
So let's say, but if they do nothing and both of these guys say get moved elsewhere, and we're sitting in this offseason, and you're praying to God that Mishkov has a really good summer, really focuses on nothing but hockey and gets back to where he was a year ago. You're hoping guys stay healthy like Forrester. You're hoping Martone makes the jump and is a stud. And it's like those are all great things, and it's to be expected. And obviously, Vladar comes back and is the same, but like you're still missing a huge piece of your team. And you told us last year that you're turning the corner to win. How much longer can you afford to wait? TK is going to be 30, 29, 30. Like he's going to be getting up there. He's your best player. Coots, I can only imagine it's only going to get worse with age, the way things are going for him. And I don't know. Dvorak's also an older guy. They're not decrepit by any means, but
no, they're one of the youngest teams in the league.
I think the fourth youngest.
Yeah.
And I want to see these wingers and some defensemen really come into their own. But I also want them playing with better talent. We can talk about the power play, how wonderful that's been for the last 5-6+ years. And I know it's a personnel thing. Let's get some of the personnel in here. Like part of me is like they got to do something this offseason to just look. You told us you're turning the corner. You had a banger of an offseason last offseason. You can't just run it back. So I'm not saying you need to go sign the highest free agent. I'm expecting something. And I don't know how you say we can give them time to wait. I agree. I'm just how long? How long are you thinking?
I don't know. They didn't put a timeline on it,
Yeah. I mean, well, they entered phase 2 of the rebuild. So what's phase 3? I think that's
so let's say phase
playoff.
1. Let's say phase 1 took what's this, Briere's third year?
Full year, I believe.
Third full year?
I think so.
All right, so let's say phase 2 is 3 full. You know what I mean? Like,
yikes!
I'm prepared to wait, dude.
So that would, I mean, they might have to. We might not have a choice, but that's just the center position. I would have hoped they would maybe go the defensive route, or maybe back up. That was a quarterback, back up goalie, or something like that. And I'm not sure. The roster is going to go through some odd changes. They really, like when they came out and said the Risto was available for trade. Part of me almost thought that was just like to settle the fans on the Dvorak re-signing because of how long it was. But it sounds, from what I understand, is they're okay moving Risto because they did pretty good without him. And I understand that he's, playoff Risto, the myth that is, and you might want to see what it is. Who really cares if he keeps getting hurt? I mean, he's hurt again.
Yeah. So they said he's available, but they're not actively shopping him.
Right. But why are you saying that at all? If you're not maybe shopping him.
Yeah, maybe like, I mean, you know how it is. Like a guy's available, but you kind of want to see what you get back for him kind of thing.
Hey, we're turning the corner and trying to win. However, if you're interested in this guy, we won't make the offer, but we won't hang up the phone either.
Right. And that's kind of like, we like him on our team, but if somebody wants him, this is what we need for him kind of thing,
It's weird. Usually a trade like that would be like a hockey trade, player for player, but I really don't know. That's weird. I don't think that if they moved on from Risto, it would upset the locker room like it did when they moved on from Walker. I just feel like it's a different fit.
Yeah. Apparently the ask is still player prospect pick, which, hey, good for them if they still think they can get that,
Yeah, what was the comparisons were like the Carlo trade from last year, which
something
netted
like that, yeah.
Boston, like Fraser Minton, which is a prospect, a pick, and I think a player. I forget. Mm-hmm. So I guess if he can stay healthy, it's going to be gets the old Taryn Hasher flu right around the trade deadline.
Yeah, he might have got it a little early before the Olympic break this year. Or maybe he's just trying to stay healthy for the Olympics. I don't know. Or maybe he doesn't even want to play in the Olympics. I really don't know.
I heard that too. He wasn't too keen on Four Nations or whatnot.
Yeah. All right. Oakham, I don't know if you can say that on here. This is YouTube, don't forget. Oakham reported me for suggesting traded for Pettersson. All right, dude. All right. I didn't read the second half of that comment. So relax. All right. Tuddy, I've been watching this for 50 plus years, and the dysfunction is still present. A coach that quit in front of the media. 11th hour forced trade of the best. I think that's what that says.
11th hour.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. There's going to have to be some moves that we don't necessarily like. The players that we enjoy are going to have to be moved at
I'm
some
not.
point.
I'm not sure what you talked about earlier in the pod, but I mean, this past week really sent me for a tizzy, Jim.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Yeah, so tough stretch for you, Jack, or flawed roster?
Both. I mean, like it's a tough stretch, but at the same time, the stretch showed how flawed the roster is. If Zegras isn't giving you a point per game, their offense almost dries up, except for maybe some TK, chipping in there because Mishkov has done virtually nothing this year, and you obviously the goaltending comes to mind. Like my God, Kolosov. Well, I was like, if we're not going to trade for a guy, we should see what we have there. He broke an NHL record. 3 goals on 3 shots. Like, are you kidding me? And it's just who they're playing. Like, these are the teams that you're going to be competing for a playoff spot with the Buffaloes, the Pittsburghs, even the Rangers until they fall off. And even that letter was sent before that game, and they looked well way better than the Flyers did. To me, the way this past week just went down was the same. It was the same freaking color orange I'm used to. It's not the new era crap. And I was a little, unhinged and off the rails a little bit because it was such a reminder to how this team had been in the past. It's like, man, has anything really changed? And you're telling me you don't have your top goalie in there and you completely revert back to your BS. And before that, I was kind of down on, how things have been going with some of their prospects. Everybody not named Martone, essentially. And I was in a dark place, and I guess I still kind of am. This week did nothing to help me there. Thank God they beat Vegas because I had that chalked up for an L. And it was, I'm seeing stuff on X in the chat about Hellenius and Luchenko and just things that are like, at the same time, well, I don't want Pettersson. Hey, I don't like him. Well, the draft route doesn't look like it's done much for us at all. I don't think we have any more top picks coming. Like, we got to do something. Got to try something. And I don't know. It's easy to get down on this team when things are bad. I think going into the season, I had my doubts, and they made me change that. And then when the injury bug starts biting, and really their goaltending, it's like a completely different team. That's why the win against Vegas was like, that was like Ersson reminding you he still has it in there somewhere. But how consistent is he? Like, I could see him playing tomorrow and giving up the first goal, the first shot. Like, so I don't know. They just need to be better.
Well, I mentioned earlier, I think Ersson's like one of those goalies. He's not like made to be a backup where he needs to have the bulk of the games. The problem is he's just not that good. He's just not an NHL starter. Like, they really, I guess they're going to have to. And Vladar's, I don't want to say he's cooked, Jack, but he hit that 30-game mark or right to it and has nagging injury already. Like the winter break, I think he's supposed to play in the Olympics, so he doesn't really get the break. But you can't expect Vladar to be healthy the rest of the season. And he can't play 20 games. Ersson's going to have to get a bulk of these games down the stretch.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to give you, I mean, you would love a 900 save percentage from an NHL goalie at some point, but he has to give you at least 890 to just keep them afloat. Because if I'm Briere, I'm looking for a guy just to have, like I don't know where you put him, or like maybe you call up Bjarnason, or you call up Kolosov or for spot starts. But the goalie position, in my opinion, right now, is a mess, and it's going to sink this team.
Shocker.
And that I can put on Briere. I'm not going to get on him about draft picks. I'm not going to get on him about not having a 1C yet or a 1D, because those things are tough to get. You need to have the ammunition. But going into this season with a Sam Ersson and hoping that he could rebound, and a Dan Vladar who has never played more than 30 games, is an absolute oversight by Briere. Now, I know Vladar gave you an awesome first half of the year, but like, again, like your body is not used to playing that amount of games in that short amount of time. So you're going to break down at some point. It's just maybe a coincidence that it happened right around the 30 game mark. But they, in my opinion, they can't depend on Vladar to be the same goalie after the Olympic break. They need to find somebody, in my opinion.
They're serious about this season, yeah. And they
Right?
lost a lot of ground over this past week. So, because it's everything's so tight. So to drop 6 in a row, it's going to sink you. So, yeah, I mean, if they're serious about this season, they're going to have to. And I don't know where it's going to come from.
Which is why I'm kind of like, hey, if you roll with Vladar and Ersson, I'm good with that. Because at this point, let's get another draft pick. Yeah. And they don't have to use it because I think the top 10 in this year's draft is wing heavy. Take another wing or trade the pick. Trade the pick, package it up with something, and go get your 1C. If there's a team that's kind of rebuilding on the fly out there, like let's say St. Louis for this example. I'm not sure where they are in the standings right now. Let's take a peek. If St. Louis is just reloading on picks and they're third from the bottom, make that trade with St. Louis at the draft or leading up, whatever it is. Because what I heard with Thomas is, he's, how do I say this? He's he's available, but only if a team blows the Blues out of the water. Like they don't need to trade him kind of thing, which makes absolute sense. But like, bottom out and trade that pick, and unless there's a winger that you think is going to be better than Martone, Michkov, one of these guys, let's start packaging stuff up here and let's fill this. I think it's going to be easier to get a 1C than the 1D. I think you can do the defense thing by committee.
If you had to, yeah.
But they absolutely need a high-end 1C puck distributor. And I think that will quell a lot of things, that will kind of put a lot of stuff to rest, ease some, because that's the big thing on the checkboard. It has been for a long time is 1C, right? And so once they finally get one of those big ones checked off, then I think you could start to take the roster a little seriously,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the fact that Dvorak's are 1C right now, that's bad. That's bad. And it should help other aspects of the game, like better face-off percentage, the power play, all things that need help, and just your wingers. You're helping your wingers out. Your winger heavy, youth-wise as well. It'll just knock everybody down, too. Like Dvorak's your 2, Scoots is your 3, like Oppels for now is your 4. Like, that's a lot easier to swallow. Or Cates is in there for somebody. Like, that's a lot easier to swallow than what we're currently rolling out there. The Blues are funny because I heard that they were kind of like, yeah, I don't see how we're competing with Dallas and Colorado and Minnesota even. So we might as well just kind of, I don't want to say burn it down. Did you really hear retool from them or reshuffle or something? The Blues.
Yeah, I think their GM is Rutherford, if I'm not mistaken. What's I could look it up real quick.
No, the Blues, it's Armstrong, I think.
Armstrong, that's it. Yeah, he was saying, I think he's like, I don't know if they're going to blow it up, but like obviously they're moving on from Shen. The what's his name? Justin Falk is on a top 20 trade list. Like they're moving on from some guys. And I think they put Thomas's name out there, but they're not necessarily shopping him, like they're letting it, the same thing with kind of like Risto, like, hey, if the right offer comes along for this guy, like a Godfather offer, we'll move Thomas, but we're not shopping him.
Yeah, it sounded like they wanted to move Kyrou and not move Thomas, but now they're kind of like, okay, we'll listen at least. And that makes sense. But as far as where they think they're at as a franchise right now, I just see too many holes. Like and they're just, the West is good. Like by the time, if they were to rebuild right now, by the time things turned around, like think about how much better, even to say aggressive retool or rebuild, whatever, aggressive is the key word. Like you got Chicago and San Jose getting better. San Jose just made a freaking trade for Kiefer Sherwood. Like they're adding. That's where San Jose thinks they're at. Chicago's getting better. We already mentioned your Dallases, your Colorados, your Vegases, like your Minnesotas. Like if I was the Blues, I would thought you would really be trying to move pieces out and kind of set up for a few years down the road. And by that time, Robert Thomas is probably in his early 30s. So, especially with how bad they are right now. Yeah. So, unless they think that it was just a misstep this year, but you named a couple of players who are, like 6-7 years ago, those guys were good. Like Justin Falk, my God. Isn't what's his name? Torrey Krug still under contract there as well. Biddington's hasn't been too good. He's good for Team Canada, I guess. But as far as the Blues go, not too strong. Moving on from Shen, who the hell's left out there besides Thomas?
Yeah, I don't know. Robert Thomas, 26 years old, 20 goals, 60 assist guy, it looks like, at his peak here. Would probably fit in Philly.
Yeah, maybe they're just playing a slow game, get people
right. Like I mentioned, they're waiting. They're not actively shopping him. They want someone to come with the Godfather offer. Like kind of like what Bill Guerin did for Quinn Hughes.
Yeah. Well, so if Robert Thomas were to be moved in 2026, do you think it's more likely at the trade deadline or in the offseason?
I'd say offseason. I don't think St. Louis is in a rush to move him. I think they know they have a 1C and they should get the package they deserve for him,
Well, it better be at least involved, for God's sake.
Let me see. I don't know what his contract is.
It's funny. I feel like the Flyers are at a point now where they can pretty much take on whatever they want.
Robert Thomas, where are you? Is he hurt right now?
You look for that, Jim, and I'm going to do the read because we may have forgotten to do it last week. So while Jim looks that up, guys. All right, guys, quick timeout because if you're a diehard Philly fan, you need to hear about this. Fans of Philly is the ultimate way to hit the road with the Birds, the Flyers, the Bills, or even the Sixers. We're talking full travel packages, your hotel, your transportation, and yes, the tailgates that are basically legendary at this point, all taken care of for you. No stress, no scrambling for tickets, no worrying about where you're staying. You just show up and throw on your jersey and enjoy the ride with your fellow diehard Philly fans. So whether it's flying out to see the Eagles take over an opponent's arena, cheering on the Flyers in enemy territory, or making it a full weekend getaway for your Phillies and Sixers games, fans of Philly has you covered. Trust me, this is the closest you'll get to feeling like one of the players themselves as they roll into town because the takeover is real. So check them out Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and start planning your next Philly sports road trip today. That's fansofphilly.com, PH Fans of Philly, where every away game feels like a home game.
All right, good stuff there. All right, Robert Thomas signed for the next 5 years. He's in year 3 of an 8-year deal, making $8.125. So pretty reasonable for top 6, top line center. But yeah, 26 years old. Have him for the next 4-5 years there at least.
Love it.
I think he'll be 31, 32 by the end of that deal. So I'd imagine they try to re-sign him again. So anyways, yeah. So it's going to be interesting. If it was me, I would leave the goaltending position as is. Flyers Twitter is going to be insufferable for the next, what month are we in now? It's almost February, March, April. Insufferable for the next 3 months. Everyone will get excited for prospects in May. June comes and make your move. Hopefully it'll be a bottom 10 pick. And look, it happened to the Islanders. Who knows? Even though I think that was a setup because they took away the
All-Star game?
The All-Star game or something. They took something away from the Islanders, and then they gave them the first overall pick. It happens to be a generational defenseman. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the Flyers can blackmail somebody or something somewhere.
I don't know, Jim. I don't know.
All right. What else did you want to talk about, Jack? I'll get the topics back up there real quick. We're just about an hour. We talked about where they are in the standings, tough stretch, some injuries. Talked about the goaltending, Pettersson, losing faith in the plan. I don't know if we really talked about that as much. Are you losing any faith, Jack, or are you still kind of like, let's see where this goes?
That is the one that stuck out to me. I wouldn't say I'm losing faith, but my faith is being tested a little bit. I want to see how Briere and company respond. I it's been a bad week for Philly. I mean, bad 2026. I'll say that much. Eagles get eliminated. The Phillies come up short against Bichette, and that really stung. And then the Flyers 6-game losing streak. Things are bad. Like, it's a bad time right now. That being said, cooler heads typically don't freak out, and hopefully something comes of this. So I know we got to get healthy, but I'm really I don't know what he could do per se. I hope that our concerns are his concerns. I don't just mean, hey, we need a 1C, we need a 1D. I hope that they kind of look at their prospect pool and are kind of like, yeah, we don't really have any top-end prospects outside of Martone. Maybe he's a vragging, depending on how you view that. Maybe I should consider some of these guys in deals, even though that wasn't part of the plan. Because I don't know how much I trust that part of the plan. Their talent evaluation. I think Michkov fell into their lap. I think Martone was a good pick, kind of fell into their lap. Maybe they were smart not to take Hagens. And that time will tell, but right now it looks pretty good. But other than that, outside of Barkey in the 3rd round and a couple picks here and there, for as far as rebuilding this team, there's some significant holes, and I don't see a way out of it except for a grandfather offer trade to somebody.
Yeah, that's that's
grandfather.
To me, that's the next phase. You made all these little moves for the Phantoms. You did a good job backfilling depth. You have some skill guys that can play in the 3rd line, which is great, but you're still missing that guy. And I have faith. I look, we have a track record for Briere. We have the Provorov trade, very good deal. Ended up getting the first for Scott Walker, who was in that deal. Sean Walker, yeah. And then what was the next trade after Provorov, Jack?
So Provorov was in the summer. Honestly, was there another one in the summer, or
Kevin Hayes? Did he move Kevin Hayes?
Oh, maybe it was that. Maybe just getting rid of him for the sake of getting rid of him.
Yeah, and then
we thought removing him and Sanheim for a first, and then it was just him for a 6th.
Right. And then if you say what you want about the Gauthier deal, obviously Gauthier is a very good player. I don't think Drysdale's a slouch. Thought last year he was a project guy, and he's improving, which is what you want to see. He's not a finished product yet. I think technically he's in his 3rd full season of NHL action when you add up all of his games. I'm going to be patient with Drysdale. I'm going to give him another year or two to come around, to figure it out.
And part of that is because his defensive game has improved by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
I know when we thought he was coming in, we were going to get the power play quarterback. Maybe that's still in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But at the very least, he's a damn good defensive defenseman at this point.
Absolutely. So, yeah. So you bring in a guy like Drysdale who can skate, move the puck. We're going to see that. I have no doubt. Fast forward a little bit to this year, more fun trade. And you have the Zegras trade. Who saw that coming? Nobody out there can say they knew the Flyers were going to trade for Zegras when they did. Right? So he's capable of making these moves. And maybe the reason why we haven't heard the Flyers connected to Robert Thomas is because they're in on him. I think we forget how this regime works. If they're connected to Pettersson, they're not trading for him.
Fingers crossed, baby.
If it's leaked that they could be interested, they're probably not. They're probably driving price up. So, I for myself, I've certainly not lost faith. I really like the job that Briere's done. Do I want a 1C now? Absolutely. But I think some things you have to be patient. And unfortunately, this fan base has had to be patient through 3 GMs and 2 of the worst before Briere. So Briere's had to do a hell of a job, cleaning up, waiting for cap space to open up, clearing some guys off the roster, bringing in bridge players, and then trying to draft well. all while doing that. So I think he's done a solid job. Now I want to see the high-end talent added, and that's going to be the hard part. If he didn't tank to get it, now you need to trade for it. So, let's see. But I'm not going to put his feet to the fire yet, because this was always going to be a long thing. If you want something to be good for a long time, it can't be fixed overnight. And I believe in that stuff. So look, if this is going to be a 4, 5, 6 year thing for sustained success, so be it. And we're in year 3. That's where my mind is. I know that sucks, but that's where I'm at.
I mean, you're right about the patience thing, which is what they've been preaching. It's unfortunate because I see now Tockett's getting all this hate, and people are saying, I think he's going to be fired. Not saying I want him fired. They're like, I think he's going to be fired. I'm like, there's no chance. There is no chance. No. He's not going anywhere for quite some time, no matter what you think. But it comes back to me. I see people who used to hate on Torts. It's like he's the wrong coach for this rebuild. Maybe there's some truth to that, because he gets a lot out of like guys, and if you're trying to lose and rebuild, you don't want that.
Yeah.
But for me, they never burn it all down to the studs. Like they try to do an on-the-fly retool, most likely because Comcast is involved and needs to make money. And I think we're seeing when you kind of don't do things all the way, you take a half measure instead of a full measure. I think we're coming up a little short, and now we're hoping and praying every day that we can make some kind of Hail Mary trade. And that's why we are where we are without the 3 most important things you need on your team: a 1C, 1D, and a 1G. And hey, maybe there's a way around it. I'm sure other teams have pulled it off. It's not likely. It's not the path of least resistance, that's for sure. But ultimately, I don't think Briere was pulling all the strings, calling all the shots, even Jonesy, to that matter. I think they said under this set of circumstances, you can do something of a rebuild and make it work. Maybe they leaned a little too heavily into the drafting analysis of Brent Flair, and maybe that led to them missing out on Boyum or Hellenius and going with Luchenko. Still a project. I know it's easy to hate. Still a project. Doesn't look too good, but still a project. You know how I feel about Nesbitt. Luckily, the chat feels stronger about him. I'm still, I don't know if I see a 2C though.
They mentioned Nesbitt in the chat. I missed that.
I saw a lot of hate on Jet, and in recent weeks, I understand that. I saw Nesbitt will be they think both players are NHL players, but for our rebuild to work, we need top centers, and I think they view Nesbitt more as a potential 2C than Jet at this time, and I don't think I see either one of them. But hey, gotta have optimism somewhere.
Yeah. All right, a couple things there in the chat. So went to the game Saturday night, Jack, up in the perch in the press box, and first thing that popped out to me was Sean Couturier.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know, were you able to watch any of that game?
You said Saturday?
Yeah.
That was the loss to
New York.
Oh God, yeah.
So he had a chance right off the bat in the first period where he should have been in on a breakaway. I don't know if anybody really remembers this, because I'm not sure what it looked like on camera. But if that was like Tippett, Konechny, anybody with a pulse, I don't want to say Michkov, because I'm not sure Michkov is much faster than Couturier. Don't hate me for saying that. Dude, he should have been in on goal and was caught within 2 strides. And he was slow. So what a lot of people are seeing on TV that apparently, I don't think is as big a deal. In person, he's slow and slower than I remember. So he might look, I know he's regressed naturally from the back surgeries, but I don't know if he's going to make it to the end of the contract. Then you had Tocchet today saying today was a maintenance day because he might be fatigued. Yeah, I think that's right. I think Couturier might be fatigued. So I wanted to point that out because there's no way that he should have been caught during this particular play on Saturday. And I was kind of shocked. And that's when it hit me like, okay, I see it. I get it now. I see what everyone's seeing with Coots. Insanely slow.
I think he forces a lot of plays too because he thinks he's going to get caught or does get caught. He's almost one of those guys who's always on. You know those 2-on-1s that always go awry, and they don't get like a pass right or something like that. Coots is almost always involved in those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, I don't want to say that I was a Coots guy. I was always kind of indifferent to Couturier. Like, he doesn't have the personality for the kind of guys that I usually kind of like to watch.
Right.
So I've always liked him because he's been on the Flyers, but I've never been a Couturier guy. So it's hard for me to also rag on him too, just because he's been around for so long. And he's signed. Like, he's not going anywhere.
It's the length and amount of the contract that it really leaves a sour taste.
Yeah.
Because other than that, you can work with him.
Yeah. So it's like, it is what it is, It sucks, but you're going to, like, I don't think he reads Twitter, so he's not going to log on to Twitter and say, oh, Davey D thinks I should retire. Maybe I'll do it and forego $8 million a year for the next 5 years.
I wish he retired. They can still pay him, but just don't count against the cap.
Yeah. All right. So I don't have much more to talk about here, Jack. You have anything you wanted to add in before we wrap up?
No, you pulled up this tweet or this comment. I didn't know if you had a.
Flair needs to go. I was just popping it up there, but yeah, he does need to go.
Well, I mean, the jury's out, I would say, but I will say this about Flair. I don't like what he does is I think he drafts too safe. Way too safe, except for Luchenko. That was nothing safe about that one. But it seems like they have at least recently, a player they like for whatever reason, and it's usually a couple of draft slots down from the consensus. I'm not gonna. I can't give them too much credit for Mishkov because any team with a pulse is taking him there, except for Montreal.
Well, safe just means high floor, right? It doesn't mean that.
I don't know what else it can mean.
So Luchenko still has a high floor.
I think they're NHL players. But like if you're a team like the Flyers and you need a 1C, I don't think you should be drafting safe. I think you should be drafting for the best potential player available.
Right.
And if you're like the Vegas Golden Knights and you just are moving and shaking players all the time to come in and like stud players go in and out of there, like they almost never have picks, but if you draft somebody, you might as well just take a shot. So I don't think you should be doing that. I don't think you should be doing that like with their plan is and where they're drafting. And I don't know how much credit I gave to him for the drafting of Martone. I think Briere and really Keith Jones fell in love with Martone.
He was the best player available by far.
I agree as well. So, and Mishkov, same deal. So who are we really hanging our hat on for Flair?
Right.
Like who really, blew you away? Forrester? That's not a bad one. I think Forrester was a great pick. You love Forrester. You loved him as draft year. Give Jimmy all the credit.
He was also like a 24th overall pick.
That's what I'm saying. That's a good Flair pick. Then he also took York's a good player. Caulfield's much better, but things like that, like York taking the defenseman, that's a safer move than the undersized goal scoring winger. Like that's where he's safe instead of rolling the dice. So yeah, I think he's a slightly above average guy. And to do the rebuild they need to do, where they're going to have less assets or less top tier assets to do it, like draft picks, top of the draft picks. Yeah, it could be tough. I think it's going to make it tough.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really get it with Brent Flair. Like that was Chuck Fletcher's guy.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, Cutter was another one of their picks, which turned out to be the right pick.
Yeah, and they did reach up for him. Actually, he wasn't supposed to go top 5.
Late riser, and yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So yeah, I'm not sure why they kept him around. I think he did okay under Fletcher, but
he was like he hit in the first and sometimes the second, and outside of Kaprizov, which is more of a let's throw a dart, not much elsewhere.
Yeah, the safe picks here.
Like he'll draft a Jason Zucker in the second round. He'll get a Spurgeon in the first round. He's not like no real stuff. I mean, outside of Kaprizov in like the 5th, which is phenomenal. But I think that was more of the we don't know if he's coming over kind of thing. I can't point to a pick and say, man, my God, he nailed that pick.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't see them moving on from him anytime soon, unfortunately.
I just don't know what their other options are.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you keep a guy like that around long enough, and it's, if he's reporting to the GM, it's the responsibility falls under the GM. So like, I'll agree with that eventually if you keep him around and the drafts are bland. But yeah. And look, if there are guys that end up becoming something behind Nesbitt, and I know he shot up the draft boards leading up to the draft, and I'm not out on Nesbitt, but there were guys, Aitchison, for example.
Yeah. I thought they traded up for either him or Jackson Smith. And I was like, damn, there could be a number one D-man there. And they went with Nesbitt. It was like, really? Really? They heard footsteps and they gave up 2 first-round picks to move up, and they had to have Nesbitt, just had to.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. I'm not out on him. I haven't watched him at all this year, so I couldn't tell you how he's doing. I know he's a point per game guy.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to Flair, these last 2 drafts are going to be huge because he had a ton of picks. I mean, especially this past year. They had, 5 second-round picks when it was all said and done? 2 first-round picks?
Sent down to another league.
Yeah, well, I mean, so if you, in 4 years, we got to see what came out of that draft. And I can't say Martone. The Martone doesn't count. Everybody else's game. Nesbitt, Luchenko. There's guys in that draft, the Luchenko draft, they took in a second round, like Gill. He's a guy. Oh, Berglund. Berglund could be a good pick. We'll see. So I want to see in a couple of years who comes out of these 2 drafts. That'll tell me a lot about Flair, to be honest.
Who said Berglund? Oakham?
I don't know. I just remembered it. Because it was that draft. I was trying to think who they drafted in the second round that year.
Yeah, Oakham was shouting about Berglund for the last 2 seasons. I thought he was jerking my chain there.
Well, I thought they were jerking my chain when I heard the rumor about the skates not fitting. I'm like, there's no way you've made it this far to be drafted and your skates don't fit right. And then he went on to have that great World Juniors. Like, okay, maybe he was telling the truth.
So I'm going to say something here. Well, no, I'm not going to say it. But I was a huge Ryan Leonard guy.
Yes, you were.
In that draft year.
Mm-hmm.
Playing pretty solid. He was playing really well before he got knocked out by Jacob Trouba.
Yeah.
Let me see what Ryan Leonard's doing before we wrap up. 29 points, 43 games. Yeah, pretty solid. Loved him. Would have been a player that I really would have liked to watch for the Flyers. But, whatever. Another wing. We ended up getting Porter Martone, who I'm not sure is exactly like Ryan Leonard. Ryan Leonard's kind of like a freight train that can score. But we'll see. We'll see. There's some things to look forward to with the Flyers. Just right now, look, anytime they lose, Twitter explodes. They lost 5-6 times in a row.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But all right, Jack, we're almost an hour and a half in. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess we should.
All right. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you enjoyed our episode tonight, make sure to subscribe and help us continue our quest for 3,000 YouTube subscribers. Give us a like. Help us achieve our episode goal of 100 likes. I don't know if we've done 100 yet on the live show, so that'd be pretty cool to hit that. Leave a comment for us. Let us know what you guys thought about the episode. And if you're listening as a podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcast or Spotify, wherever you consume podcasts, and set alerts so you're the first to know when we drop new shows. And for all of our latest episodes, live shows, short shows, recorded videos, you can find them all on our YouTube page at HW Hockey YT. For Jack, I'm Jim. We're signing off for tonight. Keep it high, keep it wide. We'll see you next time on HW Hockey.
I'll be on time next time.
You better.
Thanks for watching HW Hockey. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.